So I'm off work today for a few doctor's appointments, and I thought this would be a good time to do kind of a what we eat in a week video. I could start it today and kind of take you through the week. Now, number one, it's not going to be anything earth-shattering, and it's not going to be a lot. Most of the dinners that I cook are for David. I don't know if I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I had gastric bypass about 4 years ago. I know, hard to tell, but I still have a lot of complications from it, which is part of where my iron deficiency comes from, and I get really, really sick when I eat, like to the point of passing out sometimes. So I try to be real careful about what I eat. I'm not always great about it, especially when I make something for David that I love, which is going to be every night this week. So tonight, I kind of already got everything out. I've got about an hour before I have to be at my next doctor's appointment, so I went ahead and got everything out. We're having pork chops, just skillet cooked pork chops with like a garlic gravy, mashed potatoes, trying to use stuff that we've grown. I'm making a Vidalia onion and jalapeno cornbread. Oh, so delicious. And I haven't fully decided on the vegetable yet, but it will more than likely be a squash zucchini because we have a ton in the freezer that I put away when our garden was doing well earlier in the summer. But first, I have to get the sourdough starter fed for pizza that we're going to have. I think Wednesday night we're going to do pizza. And we just do a very simple sourdough crust. It's so easy. My starter, terribly neglected. And actually I've already fed it. I just fed it a few minutes ago. There was hardly any hooch on it. I'm not precious about how I feed my starter. The only things I stick to are all-purpose, unbleached flour, sometimes wheat, but typically just all-purpose, unbleached, and filtered water, and that's it. And so I've got her fed. We're going to leave her out on the stove probably until Wednesday, and we'll walk you through that when we get to it. But yeah, I haven't decided on what I'll cook the other night. So typically I'll cook a large meal on Sundays. This Sunday I didn't. This last video you saw, we were in the yard all day, most of the day, both days, and I was exhausted. So typically I'll cook a large meal on Sunday, won't cook again until Tuesday, and then sometimes Thursday, and usually Friday we go out to eat. I don't know if that'll happen this week though. But since I didn't cook yesterday, I'm going to cook pork chops tonight, pizza on Wednesday, and then I got to come up with something else for Friday. We've been talking about beans and cornbread, but I hate to do cornbread twice in 1 week. So maybe we'll do, I don't know, spaghetti, lasagna, something like that, something fun and easy, and that'll get us through 2 or 3 meals. David typically will, take it for lunch 1 or 2 days if he's going to be in the office and have a way to heat it up. And then we'll eat on it 2 or 3 nights. Try not to throw anything away. It doesn't always happen, but I have not learned to cook for less than 4. You would think that I would have mastered it by now. It's been about a year. But no, I still cook like I have 2 children living at home. One of them being a growing boy. So anyway, I am going to finish cleaning up around here in the kitchen and head to my next doctor's appointment, and I will see you back here tonight when we go to cook dinner. I am not precious about my potatoes when I cut them. We keep the skin on and just chop them. I just cut off the little bad parts. These are all from our garden. So, of course, they taste 10 times better. Now we'll go ahead and state for the record, I'm no chopper. I'm not good with a knife other than cutting my fingers off or anything else that gets in my way. And we're doing today, a mix of purple and Yukon Gold. I don't remember what the variety of these purple ones are. I can't remember what they're called, but they're delicious nonetheless. As usual, I'm probably making way too much, but fortunately there's so much you can do with leftover mashed potatoes. And the only thing that comes second to chocolate for David is mashed potatoes. I mean, it's actually sickening how much he likes potatoes, French fries especially. Well, that was easy. I salt my potatoes generously. That was easily like 1/8 of a cup. But I typically don't put any in after they're cooked, so. Now we will slice up some jalapenos. These are, of course, from our garden, which, like everything else, tastes better that way. I'm getting an up-close look at how pathetic my knife skills are. My son, on the other hand, and I don't know where he got it, he is a master with the knife. I don't know if I'm going to use all three. I try. I'm so shaky. All the time I shake. And it's probably because I've cut myself so many times. I have trauma. There was one night, not too terribly long ago, that I don't even remember what I was cutting, but it was with a serrated knife, and I went straight across the tip of my finger and just about cut the whole thing off. But whatever I was cutting, I got finished with it before I like to pass out. I think David was a little queasier on that than I was. So, if you're not familiar with, let me see if I can get it in here, Dave's cornbread, Famous Dave's. I could not recommend this more. Oh my gosh, it's delicious. Now, we are not cornbread purists in the sense that we like it sweet. Growing up, my mom made, just your old-fashioned kind that was just cornbread, or I'm sorry, cornmeal and salt and eggs and milk, and I couldn't stomach it. I liked it cold in a glass of milk, but beyond that, no thank you. I prefer mine sweet and spicy, and so does David. So we need 1 egg. We need, what do we need? 1/3 cup of milk and 1/3 cup of water. Before we pour it in, we will slice up our onion. I think this little tiny baby one will be enough. Now we'll cut up another onion to use in our gravy. These are going to get sauteed in a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to go ahead and start that because we want them really caramelized and sweet. These are yummy Vidalia onions, and I mean, one could argue that they're already sweet enough, but no, there's nothing like a good old sweet onion. Alright, the last thing I want to get ready is the pork chops. Just season them up and just let them sit here for a few hours. I'm keeping it real simple. Salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. Because really the gravy is going to be the star here. Alright, so I got a little ahead of myself and forgot the oven was on, so the spinach actually got a little bit of a head start while I was in the living room being lazy. We're just going to have some sauteed spinach. David does not do eggs unless it's in some sort of baked good, so I'm just going to do a creamed spinach with a little Parmesan. Cornbread's in the oven.
I forgot about the cornbreads.
Did you?
Yeah.
Now we're going to start the pork chops. And the potatoes are actually done too. I'm going to go ahead and strain those. Now normally I would put some garlic. Oh, I got some spinach in there. I would put some garlic in the potatoes and we would zhuzh it up, but since pretty much everything we're having tonight is rich, especially the gravy, I'm just going to keep it simple. And I would also normally do some brown butter, but I've used too many pans, so we're going to skip that tonight. I might have mentioned it before, but this is the worst stove ever made. There is no temperature gauge, there is no clock. There are two temperatures. There's hot and off. So even on the lowest setting, like where you would think it's turned off, it's hot enough to cook. This gravy, I've already got it all together. It's a simple gravy. It's just the onions, which I already caramelized, and then it's cornstarch mixed with water, a bunch of spices, beef broth, and a bouillon cube, and at the very end you drop in some butter and maybe a little glass of red wine, or third cup, excuse me, red wine. No. Today is Thursday. We didn't end up cooking last night, or rather I didn't end up cooking last night because David had a work function to go to, so I just ate the rest of what was left from what we cooked Monday night, the pork chops and the potatoes and the spinach. So we ate on that for 3 solid days. Tonight we're making Cajun pasta. Typically, I will not get everything prepared like this ahead of time, but I just thought it would be easier to kind of go over what's in it if I had everything ready. So we've got jalapeno, peppers, onions, some tomatoes. We've got kielbasa. Most people would probably use smoked sausage for a Cajun pasta, but we're not fans of smoked sausage, so we use kielbasa. We've got some partially cooked chicken. I went ahead and boiled this so I have some of the broth left to cook the pasta in. I've got some shrimp thawing. Another thing that I wouldn't normally use is pre-cooked shrimp, but we don't have any raw shrimp, so that's that. We've got some cream cheese, butter, Parmesan cheese, about 3 cloves of garlic, heavy whipping cream, and our spices. I don't really use the recipe for this, but I went ahead this time and measured everything out that I use, and I'll leave the whole recipe in the description. But basically what this is a mix of Creole or Cajun seasoning, paprika, cayenne pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. So, it's super easy. It's, I want to say 1 pot, but it's not. I use a smaller pot to boil the pasta in, but then you can just rinse that out, which is what I do, and cook everything else in the pot that we're going to saute the vegetables and the meat and all that good stuff in. So, let's get to cooking. Babes, did you get a bath? Did you get a bath? Can you say hello to all your fans and tell them how traumatized you are? This little tiny baby. They made you take a bath, didn't we? Poor baby. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is heat up our pan, add, I'd say that's about 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil and about 1.5 tablespoons of butter. Okay, so we'll add our onions, peppers, and I don't remember if I said this earlier, I've got a jalapeno in here too. Let those cook until they're nice and soft. Some people might prefer them crunchy. Cook them as long as you want. We prefer ours really, really golden, especially David. So now that the onions have gotten a little translucent and we're starting to see a little bit of color on some of them, I'm going to add the sausage and chicken. Now typically if I was using a rotisserie chicken, I would not add it until the end with the shrimp, just because I wouldn't want to overcook it. But since this is a breast that I just cooked and didn't cook all the way through, we're going to cook that in here with our kielbasa for probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes. I'm also going to go ahead and add all of my seasonings. And I won't add the garlic till towards the end either, because I don't want it to scorch. Alright, while those vegetables and sausage and chicken finish sauteing, I'm going to get the pasta started. I've got my chicken broth back up to a boil, and one thing I forgot to mention in the ingredients was the pasta. I'm just using what we have left over here. We've got some rainbow spiral pasta and some, I think that's penne pasta, although it looks a little bit small to be penne, but whatever, we're going to use it. And like everything else in my life, I don't measure it, but I would guess that's probably about 8 ounces. And then with that, I'll boil our tomatoes. Okay, so now that our pasta is just about done, we're going to go ahead and add in our garlic. Get all that garlic. And I don't know about you, but I don't mind if my hands smell like garlic. I think it's one of the most wonderful smells in the world. We'll turn our heat back up. Alright, for our sauce, I'm going to start out with a 1/2 block of cream cheese, and we'll see where that gets us to. I might end up using the whole one, I never know from time to time. And I think I'm going to go ahead and make the call to use a whole pack. I'll pardon the background noise. David is lovingly emptying the dishwasher for me. Where do you stand on dishes? Personally, unloading the dishwasher is one of my least favorite things in the world to do. So fortunately, David doesn't mind it, and I don't mind loading it. In fact, I prefer to load it. That way I get everything where I want it. And yeah, so we trade off like that. Similarly to putting away clothes. I hate hanging clothes, but I don't mind folding. So David's our hanger, I'm our folder.
Because I'm an awful folder.
Because you're an awful folder. This would be correct. Alright, we're going to add some heavy whipping cream. Alternatively, if it was ready, I would be using this right here, creme fraiche, but I just started it yesterday and it's still a little wobbly and jiggly. So if that was done, I would be using that for sure. And if you are a fan of sour cream, give homemade creme fraiche a try. It will change your life. I can eat it straight. Yeah. Might end up using this whole thing of, or the whole rest of the heavy whipping cream. In fact, I think I'm going to. And then the last thing we'll add before our pasta and shrimp is some freshly grated Parmesan cheese. Okay, this has gotten nice and thick. Most of the cream cheese is melted. So now we add our pasta. And I don't strain it, I just add it straight from the pot. And I might have made entirely too much pasta, if that's a thing that exists, according to David. And that water from the pasta is going to thin this out a little bit, so I'm going to let it sit here and thicken back up, because you want it nice and thick and creamy, or we do anyway. If you prefer it to be a little more thin, you can add some of your pasta water / chicken broth, and it would be delicious just like that. Okay, our last step is to add our shrimp. And again, like I said, normally I would use raw shrimp, but you work with what you got. I'm going to put these in here long enough to warm them up, but try not to cook them any more than they already are, because then they'll get all rubbery and tough. Hi friends, it's Saturday afternoon, and as per usual we have spent the entire day out in the yard. This time the front yard, which we made a lot of progress that we'll share in another video. Super excited about that, but it's getting late. It's about going on 6 o'clock and it's time to cook. I've already got some chicken broth going with some leftover bones that we had for making the dog's food, and some less than appetizing leftover carrots and peppers and onions that were well past their prime, so that's going. But what we're going to make today is we're going to start with some banana bread. We're going to some friend's house tomorrow night for dinner, and I want to take something. They're providing all of the dinner, so I thought I'd make banana nut bread because David has also had a hankering for it. Then we're going to make some pimento cheese, and I'll tell you a little story about where I got the recipe from. It's actually a jalapeno pimento cheese. It's deveined. And I'm making that because number one, I have a taste for it. And number two, we're having breakfast for dinner, which we're also going to cook. And we both thought cheese grits sounded good. And this jalapeno pimento cheese and cheese grits, chef's kiss. So, we're going to start with the bread. Now, I am making a double batch. This is just a recipe from Pinterest that is heavenly. It's got something like 4,000 5-star reviews. It's really good. I've made it before. So, I'll link that below. But it's super easy, and I am going to double it. So, any amounts that I say, if you're making one loaf, cut it in half. So, we're going to start by creaming together some butter and sugar, and I went ahead and threw in the vanilla extract. If you're anything like me, you measure vanilla with your heart. You don't follow a recipe on that, so I've probably got 3 times as much as it called for. But let's get this creamed. Okay, so we have the butter and sugar and vanilla creamed together. Now we're going to add our bananas and our eggs. We've got 6 ripe bananas mashed and 4 eggs, and remember, this is for double recipe, so half if you're only doing a loaf. And our next addition, is the flour, salt, and baking soda. So I'm doing 3 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and a teaspoon of salt. And I like to add it in a little bit at a time. Alright, we've got that blended. You of course don't have to have a hand mixer or a stand mixer. I chose not to use my stand mixer. But it just makes it easier. I always like to mix the last little bit by hand. And then we're going to add our last ingredients. I toasted some walnuts and chopped them up. And we've got 2 cups of, probably a little more than 2 cups of roasted walnuts and raisins. got that mixed. We got our pans greased and floured. It's a pretty thick batter, which is typical of a banana nut bread in my experience. I generally do not use these pans for it, so I hope it's not, they're not too thin and squatty, but it's the only one I had, it's the only kind of pan that I had two of, so we're working with what we got. Okay, we've got everything in our pans. Whoop. We're going to clean up the edges, get these in the oven. As you can see, like David said, the brains has brought in the brawn to start cleaning. So we're going to get these in the oven, do a little bit of cleaning up, and then we will start on the pimento cheese. So about 15 years ago, my daughter and I, she was 8 or 9 at the time, we took a girls' trip to Vicksburg. Just a little short weekend getaway. We stayed at an old Victorian mansion that had a restaurant called, and the mansion itself was called Anchuca. And while we were there, we had pimento cheese grits. Jalapeno pimento cheese grits, and it was heavenly. And I thought, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make this. Well, lo and behold, they had a book for sale, obviously, so we bought it, and I've been making it ever since. My brother-in-law loves it especially. I love it. My kids love it. David will eat it, but he doesn't love it. So we're gonna make that now because we want to put it in our cheese grits tonight. Super easy recipe. If you can get your hands on this book, it's called A Taste of Anchuca, and it's got a lot of wonderful recipes in it. This just happens to be my favorite. I'm going to do it a little differently than I normally would. Not too much, but I already have some grated cheese, so normally I would grate the cheese in here and start that way. But since I've already got that done, I'm going to skip that step. I do have a little bit of extra cheese that I need to grate, so I'm going to start with that. But it's real easy, and I'll put the recipe in the description. It's a block of cream cheese, a pound of medium to sharp cheddar, then a cup of mayonnaise, and in this house we only buy Duke's, so, and it's not what I grew up on, but first time I tasted it, I was like, yep, that's all I'll ever buy again. Get that in there. It calls for 4 ounces of pimentos, but I only have a 7-ounce can, and you know, who doesn't like pimentos? Funny story. Up until I tried this recipe, I had never had pimento cheese before, and I had never had it before because I loathe olives. Loathe. Well, bright one here, the brains, as David calls me, thought that pimentos were part of an olive. They're not. Nope. They are not part of an olive. They are put in an olive. So, fun fact for you there. Alright. Then it calls for, what have I got here? 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper. I don't measure my spices. That's about a 1/4 teaspoon. Garlic salt, 1/2 teaspoon. Oh.
You might need to go on for this.
Pause. Welcome back. Thank you for your offer, David. And then especially what I don't measure is dill. I have used fresh dill in this from the garden, and it's delicious. It just takes a lot more. But I'm a dill fan, so I don't mind. This is 2 teaspoons, and that's, we're gonna call that 2 teaspoons. And then the last thing we need is the juice of 1 lemon, which I discovered I don't have a lemon that's good, so they're gonna go in a jar of vinegar to make some cleaning solution, but I do have this, so squirt that in. That's about a lemon. We will put a lid on. And at first I'm going to blend this on low just because I've got these larger chunks of cheese in here. But then when we put in the jalapenos and the rest of the cheese, I'll pulse it. That didn't go according to plan. Okay, that looks good. It's nice and creamy. The author of the cookbook talks about his parents like to do everything by hand with this, so it's a chunkier texture. I prefer it really fine, so I do everything in the food processor, which also makes cleanup great. Now I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of diced jalapeno. Apologize for the dogs, clearly they're having fun. And then we're going to put in the rest of our cheese. Done. It's that easy. So this is about the consistency I like it. Very fine. Give it a little taste. It's truly the best pimento cheese you'll ever have. And if you like spicy especially, I used 1 like medium-sized jalapeno. If you like it spicier, add another. I've done that. Yeah, we're gonna get this cleaned up and get started on dinner. Now I will say it is a little bit of a looser consistency, but once it sits in the refrigerator it definitely will thicken up, and it's very spreadable. It makes a wonderful bread. It's great on a croissant with ham and tomato, especially if you get a tomato fresh from the garden. It's delicious. So let us clean up and we'll get to making dinner. Alright, I'm gonna get dinner started while David feeds the dogs, and then he's gonna help with dinner. So we're gonna start out with our sausage gravy. It's just a simple basic sausage gravy like probably everybody knows how to make, but we use hot sausage, so I'm gonna get that started now. Alright, that's good. So I'm actually going to take half of this out because there's no way we will eat this much gravy. We always have too much. So I like to just cook the whole pound of sausage and then pull out about half of it, freeze it, and we'll have that for next time. I'm out of stick butter, so I'm using spread butter. Add a little butter. Put in a few tablespoons of flour. And that's probably more like a 1/4 cup. And get a little roux going. Start working in my sausage. get that flour taste cooked off. We avoided a mishap with the bread. The timer wasn't timing, and I just happened to check it, and it's a little more done than I'd like, but at least it's not burnt. So, all right. Now we'll add our milk, and David's about to start on the hash browns. And again, like everything else, I don't measure, y'all. I just pour stuff. And it turns out okay most of the time, we think. This broth smells delightful, you guys. Absolutely delightful. Got the water going back here for the grits. Normally, there's a lot of normalies tonight, with exceptions. Normally I would use, old-fashioned grits, the long cooking, but Walmart substituted the 5 minutes, so we'll get our grits in 5 minutes this time.
That's not doggy cheese, Meg. Sorry.
It's not dog cheese.
Well, I thought it was all dog cheese.
Nope. You've enjoyed cooking with us today. We cooked our banana nut bread that was saved from disaster and turned out beautifully. We can't wait to dig into that. Our pimento cheese. Out of everything I've made this week, which is not a lot, admittedly, I hope you try that. It's heavenly. And then our very basic southern, savory, spicy, cheesy BFD for dinner tonight.
BFD is always a good idea. If you can't think of anything else, do BFD.
Do BFD. And we switch it up every time we make it, but tonight we went for just something basic and savory. So we hope you'll come back. We hope you've enjoyed watching. David hasn't been around a lot for the cooking, but he's been around for every bit of the eating.
For the eating, always there for the eating, and for the stuff we did up front today, which you'll see in the future videos. It'll be a big difference from the last time you saw it, which we're very excited about.
Yeah. We hope you will like and subscribe and come back and follow along as we make our way through our new world. We're worn out, but we're having fun.
A lot of fun. That's what it's all about. So.
That's right. So we will see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.